Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and we are talking about Tao of the Day. I present this every morning, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Central Time, 7 Eastern, and I'm always open to chatting with you about the Tao Te Ching. Now, the Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE, and it contains 81 verses or chapters or stanzas. I don't know how to refer to them all the time. Of enigmatic wisdom that helps us live a more reasonable life. It talks about the Tao is sort of the underlying nature of the universe, and we are all part of that. We are all part of nature. We are all imbued with light from the stars, from the universe. And when we allow ourselves to see that everything is part of that light, that every molecule, everything, every thought is part of that light, we'll see that everything that we do can contribute to us living a more healthy, more reasonable, more loving life. And that's really what has happened to me over the last number, 20 some odd years. It started when I was introduced to the Tao over 20 years ago in my early recovery. I got 23 years clean and sober, and a large aspect of that. And the reason that I have that is because I've taken a broad view. It hasn't been just, my life in recovery. I am recovering from addictions of variety of sorts. But what I do is I look at, well, okay, like that's a thing that happened, but here I am now. What does this moment have for me? What am I connecting to, and how do I want to be? I mean, I remember 20 years ago hearing, hearing a comment of, if your mind believes everything that you think, then every violent thing you think is, contributing to more violence in the world. And I was like chuckling at that. I was like, and playing, maybe violent video games or playing other, engaging in, violent thoughts or angry thoughts or judging thoughts. And as I have been on this path, and as I've kind of realized that everybody is light, those thoughts have lessened to the degree that I even believe that having the thoughts is like, it hurts me. And I can see that. I can see that in my life, right? I can see how if I have angry thoughts, or if I hold on to angry thoughts, how it trickles into other parts of my life. And I am literally contributing to violence, literally contributing to judgment, literally contributing to those things in my subjective experience of my life, in the subjective experience of my life. You're having a subjective experience of your life, and that is your experience. And that's the life that you're going to lead. I had a client recently call me after a session and just say, "Hey, I have a question. Do you think that my having these thoughts are contributing to my not having clients in my business, or not having clients like follow through and close on their deals?" And I was like, "Well, yes, in a way. I mean, we have to unpack that, but." Yeah, and this isn't law of attraction. This is about like, well, you are focused on something and you go out of your way to look for it, and you contribute to all sorts of thoughts in your life. Yours truly is going to join me. We're going to talk a little bit. Maybe we'll pick a number.
Good
How are you,
morning.
Julie?
I'm all right, I'm good. Again,
Good.
you're talking about something that I've noticed in myself as well. When I noticed it, I realised the feel of it, the heaviness of it, and the way that I carry that throughout my day, and how it kind of, like you said, trickles through or affects everything in my world, everything. And when I'm so focused on those thoughts of judgment and anger, and basically for me, anger comes from imbalance, actually. It comes from my noticing imbalance, and therefore that causes frustration, maybe anger and judgment. And when I notice those things, it is telling me something about myself in a way. Because for myself, as a living being interacting in this space, there is no judgment. There only is, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
the judgment and stuff comes from my thoughts.
Right.
So, and those thoughts, they don't always come in as a request. It's not thoughts that you have don't come in as requests. You don't
Right.
think I'm going to think this or I'm going to think that. You can do it once the thought's there. You can invest in that thought.
I mean, practice. Right. You can
Yeah.
invest in that thought or practice altering that thought.
Yeah, letting it go, actually.
Yeah, not investing. So it's
Yeah.
so that's like, either you invest. It's like that story of, like, there are two wolves inside of me. One is this and one is that. Which one is going to win? The one that you feed.
That's correct. Yeah. So once I'd realised that, and that I was then feeding it, like you said, you've already
Right.
explained that in other words. Once you start feeding that, it's quite impossible. It's like having a cuckoo in your nest.
Yes.
So you can't. Cuckoos tend to grow, and they are genetically kind of informed to disperse of all other chicks and eggs.
Yeah, they
So
push them out.
your
Yeah.
whole ethos in living is feeding this cuckoo, and from that you can understand then that there is nothing else for you to see, because the whole of you is invested in this, what you think is your baby bird.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why it will impound on everything in your existence. It will affect everything in your existence in that frame of mind. To be able to step back and maybe realize that that isn't your bird to feed.
Right.
Actually,
Like that was,
that's
for those.
difficult.
I want, this is sort of, I mean, I don't know if this is common knowledge what the cuckoo does. So I just want to go through just a really brief. The cuckoo bird will lay a nest in another bird's. It will lay an egg in another bird's nest, and although the birds that return to their nest and see more eggs, they don't. Like, when we talk to indigenous people, like, they don't have numbers over like five. They don't, like, counting is really something that we've learned it's a new thing for us. I mean, as a deep being, as a being that's been around for, thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, right? Like,
Can I give a little rendition on counting indigenously? Are you
yeah,
ready? One, two, a few more.
right. That's really it. Because indigenous tribes aren't trying to store things. They're not trying to hoard things. They don't have the space. They don't have the intention. We have built our lives because we learned how to count. We go, oh, I have 5 cars. I got 20 cars. I can count all of these things well, we only need one pig, like, we only need we only need to have these few traps out there, because each one is placed so that we can have food. And that's
Yeah.
all we need. We only need food for today. So I don't need to think about, well, what's going to happen in 10 days? I can't even imagine what that is.
Yeah. Also, have you're kind of being quite hopeful that you'll get to 10 days. You need to feed
Right.
yourself today, not 10 days'
Absolutely.
time. Yeah.
And so the cuckoo will lay its egg in another bird's nest. And that bird will maybe notice that there's a large egg in their nest, but they'll sit on it and they'll nurse it. And when it hatches, it is going to be louder, and it is going to grow bigger, and it is going to demand more food, and it will push other eggs and other chicks out of the nest to take for itself. And so the cuckoo has just evolved to do this. And so what Julie is saying is that if your thoughts are cuckoo, then they will take up more space in your mind. And if you allow them to, if you don't add awareness to the fact that you're feeding something that's coming from outside of you, then you will ultimately believe it to the extent and stand up for it, and you will defend it because you will think it's yours.
Yep.
All the while, it's just something that got placed in your nest at some point. And this is where I talk about frame of reference, living under the influence, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah. It's a beautiful analogy, isn't it? And it fitted so well with what you were talking about. So if you said that you suddenly had an egg that was anger, you can now see how it takes over your world if you allow it, but with a little bit of awareness, a little bit of just looking at the hearing and the now and seeing what there is there without investment. Without that investment of feeling of historical learning, all of that, the influences, you're going to be able to recognize that.
Right, and that's why I tell people to ask, do you like that you're doing this? Because if you ask, do you like that you're doing it? I don't like that I'm continuing to contribute to this loud, like overbearing. Like, I don't like that I'm angry. Okay, I'm going to get angry. You're going to continue to feed the bird because you don't know what the hell to do with it. But you don't like that you're doing it. Okay, well, you continue doing it. You recognize you don't like that you're doing it. And eventually, you stop feeding it. Eventually, you'll come to the realization that feeding this damn thing is only causing things to get worse. Continuing to contribute to a toxic relationship, continuing to contribute even with your thoughts, is recognizing at the start without judgment that you don't like that you do it. You're going to do it until you don't, but you don't like that you're doing it. And then allowing yourself the freedom to actually make the decision to stop feeding it when you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's absolutely superb. I do tune in most days, Martin. When you come on, I get a notification because I follow you. But, when I switch on, I listen first because sometimes I don't need to take part. I can just listen. And today was an awesome conversation you were having. And it's something that I recognized the cuckoo in my nest.
Yeah.
And being able to give it that analogy really explains pretty well what I did.
Yeah. It takes patience.
Yeah. It takes being kind to yourself as well.
Absolutely. There
Yeah.
is so, like, you have to, like, I always say judgment stagnates energy, and I got that from a friend of mine, Alan. And it's true. The minute you start to judge, the minute your mind goes to judgment, you say, like, instead of being kind and being like, "Hey, I don't like that I do this," and giving yourself some just understanding of it. And instead of that, you say, "Oh, I shouldn't do this," or "This is bad," or "I'm not," and I'm going to hide it. Once you start kind of closing off to all of those things, then you really that's when you start hitting those pacifiers really hard, like overeating or smoking or gambling or drugs or even anger.
Social media, there's another
Social
one.
media. Yep, yep, yep,
Netflix, there's another one.
absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a particular feeling to that judgment as well. When you're making a judgment, if you were really observant about yourself, there's kind of a feeling in the gut. As soon as that thought, that judgment comes out, you can feel that. And that feeling is what makes you action. And that's where the choice is then. Okay, I don't like that I'm doing this. I can sit with that. I can feel that. And that moment in time, that moment of that kind of thinking allows you space to observe without the judgment then, and start to kind of make decisions maybe that are a little bit more kind of suitable to you then.
Right, because so often when we're under the influence, and also when we're under the influence of our parents, because I mean, for those of you who don't know my language, what I talk about is being under the influence of things outside of us. So I got 23 years clean and sober, so I talk about these things in terms of addictions and things, and I do see them very similarly. So when we're under the influence of our parents, we think about these things as right and wrong, and continuing to progress. I can walk, I can speak, I can get a job, I can get good grades, I can do all of this, and it's all about performance.
And seeking approval.
Right. So we're under the influence, and we're
Yeah.
living with this frame of reference that if I don't continue to improve in a way that is externally guided, then I am not going to be loved.
Yeah.
And when we believe that, we go out into the world, and everything that we do is for this external stuff. I mean, I remember one time when someone told me that they were getting sober for their kid, and I had to ask the hard question. I was like, okay, well, what happens if your kid dies?
Yeah.
Like, is your responsibility to be sober no longer important?
And is your responsibility to get sober now your kids?
Right.
Because that's where you've passed the responsibility. You're
That's right.
still not responsible yourself. You are now passing that
Yeah.
on to your kid. You're
Right.
saying, it's your responsibility, kid,
That's right.
that I'm getting sober.
That's
Right?
and that's a lot to put on a child. It's a lot to put on yourself, and that's why I always tell people, well, you're going to do it until you don't. And if you're going to do it, just do it. Recognize you
And
don't
it,
like that you do it, and observe.
it
Be
lowers
observant.
the bar. It makes it not such hard work.
Right.
Because hard work usually is the barrier.
Right.
People don't
Yeah.
like hard work. Nobody likes hard work. As you know, I'm the laziest person on the planet. I don't like hard work, but I do like sitting and contemplating. I do like a puzzle. I do
Yeah.
love a puzzle.
And
That's
that's it,
great.
and that's where it comes, this in your mind, in your thoughts, like you contribute. It's easier when we're under the influence to contribute negative thoughts
Yeah. Leave that
because
to
we're
people.
not good enough, or that further compounds the influence under which we're living.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
So let's with that in the air, I would love for you to pick a number.
Number 11.
Number
Thank you.
11. Oh, I like 11. I know 11.
Good. I don't.
All right, so you have a minute. I'm going to read this, and then you're going to come back up if you have the time.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I will.
Number 11 is emptiness is valuable. Spokes, tire, rim, and hub all make a wheel, yet it is the space where the axle goes that makes it worthwhile. Clay is formed into a vessel. A vessel's function is to hold things, thus its form includes emptiness. A house can be built, but if it were solid, it would be useless. It is easy to see structure, but structure is there to expose the value of emptiness.
That's absolutely awesome. I do know it. Sorry, Martin John. I do know that
Absolutely.
one.
Yeah, you
It's one of
do.
my favourites.
And it's interesting with what we're talking about, and you just dropped off, so definitely come back if you have the moment. With what we're talking about, this idea of living under the influence, the idea of having angry thoughts and that contributing to the world, right? The angry thought and the thought of being a victim, and the thought of all that's all out here in, like, I know that we're talking about physical things, right? We're talking about physical things like spokes, tire, rim, and hub all make a wheel. Clay is formed into a vessel. A house can be built. All of those are physical things. And the structure and substance. This is the masculine structure and the feminine substance. The mind and the body are structural things. The
Mm-hmm.
mind sorts through things and thinks of things, and but the substance is you
Correct.
beneath it all. Beneath beneath the thought, beneath the education, beneath the knowledge, there is intuition. There is something that is not holding on to all of this information.
Mm.
Beneath your body, there is something that when your body goes, will continue. That is the substance. That is, everything has this substance. The body is simply there to give it form so that it can have the experiences, the subjective experiences that it's going to have in life.
I'd also say that thoughts are things. Thoughts are structure.
Yes, thoughts in the
And
mind are
yeah,
structure.
the substance is how you interact with that, how you feel about that.
Right. The substance is the you beneath the thought.
That's correct.
Right.
That's why they always say you are not your thoughts.
Right. And you are not your body.
That's right.
Right. And so when it says here, like spokes, tire, rim, and hub all make a wheel, we can say your body, your thoughts, your experiences, all of that make your life, yet it is the space within all of that makes it all worthwhile. That's what, it's that observing of all of it. Behind the action, behind the judgment, behind the thought, behind the ego, behind all of that. That's the substance of your life. That's the thing that is contributing to the whole, and if depending on like what your beliefs are, of Tao, of Brahman, of God, right? You are contributing to the wholeness of the
Yeah.
universe.
The way that I kind of put that in a degree is if you had lots and lots of threads, okay, no, those were people, that the threads would be the structure and the actions might be the way the weave.
Right.
And then the color, again, is kind of the essence of who you are. Who you are, not what you think or the
Who you
actions you say.
physically, like
Yeah.
this you from the outside.
And then, so the space would be the pattern that the weave creates. And without every single thread, there is no Tao. There is no fabric, if you like.
It will unravel.
Yeah.
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 You know, I was talking earlier about this idea of like having angry thoughts and having, engaging in violent games, and that, because there is a substance underneath this fabric of our experience of the physical world, because there's substance underneath it, like we contribute to that. So if we are having negative thoughts, they feed other negative thoughts.
That's right.
This is the cuckoo analogy that we were talking about. This is like you start feeding into those things. And when you are born and you are under the influence of your parents, and if your parents are negative people, now you could fight that negativity, and some people do. Sometimes that fighting the negativity is just more negativity because you're fighting it.
Yeah, you're feeding
So
it,
it's
basically.
so it might look like it's positive, but actually you're resisting. It's more rigidity. And I know we talked about recently in an episode about like the difference between rigidity and flexibility, and walking with life and walking with death, and these sorts of things, where it's just
Yeah.
like rigidity can look very different in very different situations. Rigidity could look flexible from one vantage point, but it could be rigid for you.
Mm.
And it could, and that flexibility that is for one person might be rigidity for another, and
Yeah.
the rigidity for one person might be flexibility for another in another point of time, in another situation. All of those things are interchangeable because they're not very different.
Mm.
And this is substance and structure, right? Like, what is the substance for you in your experience? How is in your soul, in your oneness, in the subjective view of your life as God, as oneness, as Tao? You are having this experience. And so that's why it was so important in that other verse that it was like rigidity of any kind. So it doesn't matter what kind of rigidity it is. It might be a very flexible rigidity. But if it's still rigidity, if you see it as rigidity, that's going to be a companion of death.
Mm.
And as we look here, this is all about seeing it from the vantage point of substance. And what is like your substance and another person's substance are going to be completely different. And if you judge it, that's just you judging the structure of their substance.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a word a little sentence that I enjoy, and I say it quite often to a lot of people. As soon as a judgment comes up in my mind, usually about maybe what someone might own or how they present themselves or, where they are in life, their stature, their whatever it is, this sentence comes to my mind for release. And it is that's their journey, their task, so that I don't have to. And it helps me so often to stop
Yeah.
the tracks and just say, that's their task, their journey, so that I don't have to. And it means that I can let go of it. It's not for me. That's not for me. That's for them. So if they don't understand, that's fine. Maybe along their path, on their journey, through their task, they'll learn something else that I don't know. Who am I to say they
Right.
or should or must or I'm not here to control them. I'm here to experience the experience. And through that, the experience is experiencing itself
Right.
through all of us as a whole. So a great way of saying what you're putting in really is what I say about the sky. In the morning when I wake up at 6 a.m., it's a clear sky, and the sun is shining. And as it rolls around to around 9 p.m., I look up and I see clouds, and those clouds kind of remind me that when people wake up in the morning, they have to go to work, they have to, and they should, and they must. They're adding to the cloud, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
And so each one of us can contribute in
Well,
in judgments and things like that. We all contribute to what we're all feeling.
right. That's Tao.
Yeah,
Right. Like we are all imbued with Tao, and we all have a purpose in this life to be and do and express something, and and that's why there's so much in Tao. We talk so much about surrendering. Surrender to this. This is living in collaboration with Tao constantly. You are
mm,
in collaboration. This is your experience, your subjective experience, which is true for you.
that's right. Only for me though.
Of what's that?
Only for me though. It's only
Right,
true for
only
me
for
because
you.
I say it is.
But you are also part of oneness. And so
Yeah,
that's the objective. You can't witness the objective part of it, but you
yeah,
can step back and embrace the subjectivity of your experience. And I always tell people, don't think other people have consciousness.
that's
They're
right.
just They're
That's
just
the,
playing a role in your life so
yeah,
that you can have this subjective experience.
correct. That's exactly it. That's bang on the money. Who am I to suddenly judge? Because
Right.
that's what you're doing when you're saying that people, maybe they're a bit thick, or they're not very spiritual. That's you placing them on a measuring stick that's yours. That's your measuring stick. Chuck it away. You don't need it. That's
Right.
what they're
It's
doing.
it's it, right, because that's only measuring you,
Yeah,
and you're looking at other people who are showing you yourself.
yeah,
And if you play the victim to their action and you just say, well, it's them, you got to remember, it's not, there is no them, because this is your subjective experience.
yeah.
And then when we look at this is where the emptiness is valuable. No matter where you look, you're not going to find that objective oneness. It is there, but you can't find it. It is
Yeah.
always there, and it is never hidden, and yet you can't find it, because what is the most valuable thing? It's this emptiness, right? The structure is there. The structure of them, the structure of their actions, the structure of you, the structure of your thoughts and your actions are only there to expose the value of the emptiness of everything. And the emptiness is the source. The emptiness is the substance of all things.
I know, and as you're saying it, I'm smiling my little head off, and it's just so good. I'm sorry, I know when I say good, I'm inviting bad, but
Yeah,
it's,
no, it's
yeah,
it's beautiful.
yeah. So yeah, I'm just grinning my little head off right here, right now.
Oh, good.
This experience, is so peaceful, and it's space that is, with structure around it, and this space is feeling good. The
Yeah,
space is very comforting, because the reason I say that is because I understand when I talk to you and talk to other people that we are all experiencing. We're never alone. We are part of each other. We are each other.
yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
And we can't do anything about that, right? Like we can't have I can't have an experience for you. I can't express, like, you can learn from your experiences, but it's always your subjective experience. It's always
Yeah.
it's
It's always
always coming
learning.
from you.
It's always my learning as well.
That's right. That's right. And you can elect to not learn. However, I think it's harder to elect to not learn once you've started.
I know, Martin John. Look what you've done.
Yeah, look at what I've done. But I think you've come such a long way. You've done so much work, and your entire family is benefiting from that.
Yeah, they are. They are. I'm watching them all grow and move when I've suddenly decided with my family to allow them their journey, their task, and their experience
Yeah, I mean, I
without trying
remember
to
when
influence.
you couldn't even tell your daughter no.
Oh, yeah. I don't say anything at all now. I
Yeah,
just bring her up and have a conversation. There's
yeah,
no. The thing is there's no wanted result now.
right.
There is no agenda. There is no influence there. Either way, I just recognize her as a soul
Yeah.
on a journey
Before,
that
you
I'm.
guys had your roles, right?
Yes,
She
yeah,
she needed to manipulate you, and you needed to get her love, and all of these things, and it's like, whoa, now everyone's got to change, and she wasn't happy about that, but then, oops, she fell in. Why did she fall in? Because that's your experience. You
yeah.
experienced her fall in. Did she? Maybe not. She might still be manipulating other relationships, but that's not
That's
your
for
business.
her. Yeah, that's her task and her
Right,
journey.
that's her work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. Martin John, you are an awesome being. Thank you so
Oh,
much for having me.
absolutely. Anytime,
Thank
always.
you.
Love you.
Love you.
Oh, number 11. I really do love number 11. And it's early in Tao. And so when we talk about it, it is talking about the physical things. But I love that we were able to think about it as thoughts too, right? Thoughts are not empty. That's not emptiness, right? I always, there's a quote that I have in my book of quotes that I say, which is, and I did get it. I got something like this from somewhere. It was this idea that you always leave room for inspiration, right? It's not make room for inspiration, but it's leave room for inspiration, which means don't overfill yourself. Don't overfill yourself with food. And if you start looking at it, I remember when I started looking at the idea of leaving room for influence, I started thinking that like, oh, well, maybe I can be just a little hungry. Maybe I don't have to eat a big meal. Maybe I can bring what I'm eating down and down and down. And it's like, oh, like maybe I can drink less beverages. Maybe I can not fill my schedule completely. I can not fill my house completely. Where else can I leave room? Because like when you eat food, like after a meal, like there's no room, if you eat a big meal. It's like, well, what if I ate half of the sandwich? And if I did that, would I feel hungry or would I feel full anyway? And maybe not, right? Maybe for the first week I'm feeling things out. And this has happened to me when I was trying to leave room for inspiration. And that's why this is talking about, like, that's what this is, right? This emptiness is valuable. That space that's left. Of course, it's not empty, but to leave a little bit of room is like having that hole where the axle goes in a wheel. Spokes, tire, rim, and hub all make a wheel. And you can have a wheel, but if it didn't have that space where the axle goes, well, what is a wheel then? It's just round. And what, like, you can, like a tree trunk, you can roll something on top of it, but it is that emptiness that you can place something on top of it and then roll it, so, but spokes, tires, rim, and a hub all make a wheel. All of these obvious things make a wheel, and we're going to celebrate the making of the wheel. Yet it is the space, like it needs space. Clay is formed into a vessel. The vessel's function is to hold things, just like us. Like we're here to hold things, hold experiences, and so there needs to be space. We can hold food, but if we're full, like how much food can we hold? If we have knowledge, and this is one of the things that Tao talks about a lot, like knowledge in your mind. It's like you can hold all of this information. But I look out at the world today and I say, oh my God, every day, it's my guess that every day creates more writing, more content, more video footage, more that any one entire life can consume. So there is more information being created every day than an entire life can consume. You can fill yourself to the brim every day of your life, from birth to death, consuming what was produced yesterday. And my guess is that by humans, right? Like we'll say by humans, and that is accessible online, you could not consume that in a lifetime, right? Even if you watched every video at 2x speed. It is my belief that there is so much being produced, so much content being shuffled out there into the world, that what was produced yesterday could not be consumed in a lifetime. What does that mean? That means why try, really? Why, like how important could any of this really be? You know, this is where, like, that's the spokes, the tire, the rim, and the hub. And there is no empty space. There's not a single bit of empty space to make it worthwhile. It is just, I've said for a number of years now, it's all stupid. Even my Tao, even this version of my Tao is stupid. It's all stupid. It's just more garbage in the world to be consumed. And it really kind of puts a spotlight on how important it is to be still. And if, like, just like my Tao, like, if you're inspired to make something, make it. If you're inspired to make content, make it. If you're inspired to put something out in the world, put it out in the world. But also recognize that yesterday there was enough content, enough stuff made in the world that it could not be consumed in an entire lifetime. Showing the importance, or the lack of importance, of all of it. And it's a really interesting, and when I think about that, and I think about that from where we started this conversation, the idea of having negative thoughts, or the idea of having violent thoughts, and putting that into the world. All of these things are being produced and being put into the world. Your thoughts are being produced and being put into the world, even if they're not outright products, even if they're not outright content. It's being all put into the world. Hey, Mary, how are you?
Oh, hey, I didn't even realize you had brought me up already. Um, you know what? I listened for a little bit before I decide to join or not join, but you are so spot on with that, with there's too much. And I think what it comes down to is that some people will choose to do something or make something just to do it.
Well,
Right.
there's a lot of motivation. There's a lot of people living currently under the influence, in my terminology, under the influence, or with the frame of reference that their productivity has a lot to do with their value.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and there is a lot of people that want attention, and they get that through social media, and this is where, and all of that stuff is really being used to further other products because of advertising and stuff. And it's an insidious sort of cycle that we've found ourselves.
No, and you know what? And I agree. And um, again, and I think that you and I had talked about it and described it as, intentionality, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is all about needing to be very intentional, intentional with our thoughts, intentional with our words, intentional with our motives, intentional with everything. Because if you're just producing to produce without a good motive and intention behind it, who's it going to help?
And this is, and I want to say that is a very advanced sort of way of looking at it, because some people, they have no intention in their life at all, right? Like they're not aware.
Right.
And so and this is why I say the phrase, like, you're going to do it until you don't, and become aware of the fact that you like or you don't like that you're doing this thing. Like, if you don't like that you're doing it, once you become aware of that, you have the ability to incorporate intention.
No, absolutely.
Until awareness is had, like, and I agree with you, like, oh wait, and I never really had the intention to not have violent thoughts, but through awareness, that came as a byproduct of that awareness. And then I could adjust and say, oh, it feels better when I don't have violent thoughts on the long term. Right now, I'm in the long game. I'm no
Hmm.
longer playing the short game of instant gratification. I'm playing the long game of, like, peace and contentment in life.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And but and I had what made me think of all of this, like when you were, it's like I tune in on just the right times and just the right days because
That's God. That's okay.
you are absolutely right. And because in 2000, from 2016 to 2019, I had begun my own domestic violence page to help women,
Yeah.
and I did it on Facebook. And so, I could, it was endless, the things I was able to talk about and say. I shared my own story, and then it was just a constant roll of being able to for things to talk about and come up with. And, but toward the end, and, I was forcing myself because I felt like I had this obligation to say something or to do something, right. And the days that I struggled to find something to talk about, it was less productive. There weren't as many people who would watch the videos or who would tune in, and so it became the point where it was like, okay, if I don't feel it inside, if I don't feel inspired that
Right.
day, to just let it flow, right? Or if something doesn't just come to me naturally, if I have to sit there and really contemplate and try to force a topic, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And I'll tell you that the days that it would just come to me, those were the days when people who had never watched the page before would watch it,
Right.
and they would comment, or they would contact me after because they needed help. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, because and you know what, I have to say, then I wasn't reconnected to Jesus, but it was, you still know,
You might not
you
have
still
recognized
know,
it, but
but
like just like with Tao, Jesus isn't going anywhere just because you're a bitch. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
exactly. Oh, and I was back then. Let me tell you something. Whoo, you take a woman away from domestic violence, and not every woman comes home with no fear. I've said this 100 times, but
Yeah.
I don't know why I came home with no fear, but I was not a nice person to some people. Let me tell you
Right.
why,
Yeah,
you know.
and that is a version of fear. It's just a different kind.
Yeah, you're not allowing yourself to react
Right. Right. You're
fearfully.
not you don't trust.
Oh, exactly. No.
And
Yeah.
that is your experience of a very specific kind of fear. If
Yeah.
you can point to it, and this is what this idea of number 11 really kind of points to. You can point to the tire, the rim, and the hub, and you say, look at all of this, it's a wheel. But if that empty space isn't there, it's useless.
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree with you 150%.
Yeah.
100%. And I would take, if I was hurt, like if someone hurt my feelings or I was just hurt from something at that point, Martin, I was like, I have cried too much in the past. Like, but I can break it down now. I can understand it now. But then it was just my mind, my heart automatically turned it to anger,
Right, of course.
because it was so much easier to be angry. And this was after I left, than it was to cry and to be like, no, I'm not going to shed another tear. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And
Like there's a lot to prove.
oh yeah, oh my goodness, let me tell you something. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I understand it all now,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and just like, as we're talking about this, so in 2019, I decided, you know what, it's time to shut the page down. You have to understand and realize on your own, when is it time? When is it time? In
Yeah.
3 years' time, I was blessed immensely to be able to help people that I never thought I would be able to help. I mean, the stretching of this page from on a little phone. I always made it on my iPhone, right? On a Facebook page, and it went across the country. I'm still in touch with a couple of the people that I was able to help. It's amazing.
Yeah.
7
Absolutely.
countries, Martin, 7 countries. And I was just so blessed. I'm humbled when I say this, right? Blessed. Whoever would have thought? But I knew that it was time.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And you have to know this. And that's like you said, some people don't know. They're
Well, if
there,
you
you
were
know?
to invest all of your ego and all of yourself into this thing, and this became your sole identity, you would not be able to step away from it. You would not be able to end it, even if it was obvious it was the end. I mean, we can look at government, and we can look at products, and we can look at institutions, and we can just very easily look at these things and be like, whoa, maybe it's time you hung it up. And because there's so much identity attached to those things, attached to Republican, attached to Democrat, attached to, revolution, attached to anger, attached to being a mother, or being having an identity of some sort. Because there's so much that we identify with, we don't like, if that's who I am, just like when I was going to be quitting drugs and alcohol, I was like, without this, who would I be?
Right, right. No, absolutely.
And if you can it and if you believed that without that page you were going to be nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you would not be able to give up that page, because that is going to take your value. That's going to take your, and the thing is that's just structure, just like we were talking about in 11, right? That page, that page was the structure that exposed the value of the experience and the lessons that you carried. And that's the substance that drove that page into existence. And that was driven by that deeper connection to source, that deeper connection to God, Tao, whatever. Like, that's how it got inspired. And then you had to push and pull. You had to wax and wane. You had to do things with just structure, and it didn't yield anything. And then you did things with inspiration, and sometimes that didn't do anything. And you had to just give in, and you had to just surrender to the experience, and then
Exactly.
let it go.
Exactly. And you know what? And I am able to look back on that time in my life, right? And it's with good, but it's also with lessons,
Oh
you
yeah.
know? And that's
There's nothing that is like, if you aren't learning, that life is the lesson. It is the lesson that you're here to,
exactly.
and you will get the same lesson over and over and over and over until you
You
pass the
learn it.
test,
Yes.
right?
Oh
Like,
my gosh. Yes.
you know,
Oh boy, do we ever, right?
yeah. And that's why, that's probably why, I mean, you were in the violent situation that you were in for so long, until you learned that you had more value than that. Now, you
Hmm.
had to attach to certain ways of being from that, and then that led you into your next way of being, and the next, and you continue to grow from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's still stages of healing, but
Yeah, of course.
again, like
You're
you
you're
said,
not done. If you
no,
were done, you'd be dead.
no, like you said, I have to learn to receive now.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of receiving, you want to pick a number?
Absolutely. Let's go with, give me a moment, because you know what I do when I go to pick a number is I wait until I feel good about it on the inside. So give me a second,
Yeah, take your time.
and let's go with 77.
77. Man, that's another one. Let's go ahead. And if you drop off and you have the time, please come back. Otherwise, I will just
Yeah.
continue talking about it. This is the bending of a bow.
Okay.
Tao acts, and this is funny just because of what I was just saying, this idea of waxing and waning and going back and forth and learning this lesson, and then, I got to learn it a different way or whatever, and moving
Hmm.
forward. So Tao acts on the world as the bending of a bow. The top is forced down when the bottom is moved up. It is impossible for one to act without the other responding. Unlike man, Tao is patient and neutral, quietly adjusting excess and deficiencies, taking from what is too much and giving to what isn't enough. Ordinary men go against Tao, taking resources from areas that are deficient and giving resources to areas that compulsively consume. The master knows all things are being adjusted, and although she cannot always see it in action, she has faith it is working through her. In this way, she allows her actions to unfold, and neither dwelling on them nor taking credit. Aligned with Tao, they complement all things.
It's a pretty good number, huh?
It is. You know, one of the things that, stood out to me about this when I was reading it, is this quietly adjusting excess and deficiencies, taking from what is too much and giving to what isn't enough. And I think a little bit about being in a situation of domestic violence, because I'm like, so if you are in this state of domestic violence and you're getting physically hurt and you're trapped in this situation and you're sort of imprisoned in certain ways, Tao is patient and neutral. It doesn't actually hurt when you hurt. Tao is neutral. It doesn't care that you stay in this situation. It loves you regardless of how much respect or love you're going to give yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it isn't going to force you to make a decision, because it is also patient. When you are ready, you will make the decision, and it is going to love you throughout that. That's how you have the strength to be in that. And then that is how you have the strength to grow through it. So yes, it is quietly adjusting excess and deficiency, meaning that it may be happening over a period of time. And we might not be able to see it. Taking from what is too much and giving to what isn't enough. It is taking power from the person that was committing violence upon you and quietly, patiently giving it to you. And that's something that you wouldn't be able to experience until you were ready. And Tao is patient. So it's not going to force you to be ready. But when you are, it is going to present to you all that it has invested in you. And in the end here, it says, the master knows that all things are being adjusted. And although she cannot always see it in action, she has faith that is working through her. Even in those situations, you can look at the situation with open eyes, with awareness, and say, I still can't leave. For whatever reason, I'm not ready. And you know that within yourself. Now, Tao loves you and is going to give you the strength to get through that, to whatever degree that is. But it is also neutral. So it isn't going to force you to do it. It's going to force you out. It's going to ask you if you want to stay with increasing intensity. But that is the space that's what stood out to me. I'm bringing you up. I forgot that you had dropped. Sorry.
It's okay. That's not a problem. I will tell you that, over the years, and I'll tell you that because I had left 7 times and went back because it's so easy to believe their promises, right? And but when I left the 8th time, you really do have to reach a breaking point on your own.
Yes.
And so many people don't understand it. I have tried to help with family members that, man, I talked to one family member once I was home and doing my advocacy, and they were so hardened against their daughter. And I spoke to the mother, and she was just being rotten. I finally got so frustrated with her. I said, let me tell you something. I said, if your daughter knocks on your door the next time and you turn her away, I said, that could be the time that she really means what she's saying. I said, and so she has no place else to go but back to him. I said, and he kills her. I said, her blood is on your hands. And,
Right.
you know, I am very blunt sometimes. And because I got so outraged with her, because family members don't get it. Friends don't get it, you know, and it's so sad. But I was in that same situation and I understood. And it's so hard for people to get it. But I'll tell you that, you know, I knew going back the last couple of times that I didn't want to be there. But I was like, I would go through it in my mind. I'm like, well, you know, I'm the one who makes the money because he swore, you know, I'm not going to work if I have to pay bills. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, so it was me taking care of our kids and him and myself. And, you know, okay, well, I can make it on my own. I could do X, Y, Z. So it must be that I love him. You know, it's like you're talking
Right.
yourself
Right.
into believing, you know what I'm saying? And, but when I had finally left and I've been home in 10 years, buddy, I'm going to be home 10 years in September and I am going to
Congratulations.
celebrate.
Yeah.
Ooh, but people will ask me at different times and I'll tell them, yes, you know, I was in domestic violence for 10 or 12 years. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'll stop them, Martin. And I'll be like, please don't tell me, you know, I said, please don't apologize because A, I'm stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And B, I was meant to go through it.
Mm.
And I'm like, not that I enjoyed it, that don't get those two mixed up. But had I not experienced it for 12 years, I would not be able to help the people that I have helped because they have a hard time trusting anybody who cannot relate to them.
And when we look at number 77 and we think about the Tao and the bending of a bow, just in the beginning, like just what you just said, this idea that without that experience, I would not be able to contribute in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Tao acts on the world as the bending of a bow. The top is forced down when the bottom is moved up. It is impossible for one to act without the other responding. The reason that we have so much domestic violence support is because there's so much domestic violence and so many people that have had the strength to get out of domestic violence situations. And now, would it be a better world if there was no domestic violence?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course. However, has there ever been a time in which domestic violence didn't exist?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Nope.
So we are probably on a much better path because we have people and because we have institutions and because we have methods for getting the information out, like Facebook and all of this. And this is where, you know, we start really starting to see, like, you know, yes, it takes time, but time is just something that we experience. Like, we're experiencing millennia of domestic violence and a drop in the bucket of domestic violence support.
Mm-hmm.
But
My
what
goal
is
is
it?
to make it not so taboo anymore, Martin.
Right. But
That I want commercials made about it like they make it for every other awareness. You know what I mean?
yeah, but just like what this number 77 says is, unlike man, Tao is patient and neutral. Like, it's not trying to, it is adjusting where it needs to be adjusted. And we happen to be at the beginning of an
Okay.
adjustment,
All right. I see what you're saying. All
you
right.
know? And making commercials for that is great because then it spreads the message and we start to, and just like we were talking about earlier, when you recognize you have thoughts of violence, you contribute to violence in the world. The more we have violence in our video games, the more we have violence in,
Oh,
you know, accessible porn, the more we have violence in all of these places, the more we think about violence. And then we also stand up for our ability to think about violence. I remember it was just like, well, I don't want to give up this violent video game that I have. It's not that violent anyway. Da, 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 da. And then it's like I realized, you know what, my life is so much better when I don't have that in my life.
Yes.
because it does affect me. I do get angry, and I do have this, and I'm contributing, and I'm witnessing, and I'm feeling hurting,
Yes. Yes. It
and
soaks into your mind and gets into your heart and soul.
and my mind is connected to every other mind on the planet and maybe in the universe. So I am not only contributing to something I don't like that I feel in my life, I am putting that in the world as well.
Yes. Yes. I
And
agree. Yeah.
when you think peaceful thoughts, then you put peaceful thoughts out there. When you talk about being free from domestic violence, other people have the desire in themselves. They are inspired because of your thought, literally,
Mm-hmm.
to be and free themselves and to be free from that as well. And to stand up for who they are and to love themselves in a
Yep.
way that is healthy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's what I want to put out there. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful even for the times when, this platform and times I've been able to discuss it here and there. And I don't know who's listening on your platform or anybody else's who may be a victim. And I'm talking about men too. My
Oh, yeah.
goodness. Martin, do you know how many men are victims?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I don't know a number, but I know that a lot of men are victims of, like, it's, like I remember when the U.S. women's goalkeeper, Hope Solo was, like accused of being violent against her partner.
Yes, it's over 850,000 men are victims every year, but Martin, that's only 25% of reported cases.
Right. There's no way that everybody's reporting that. And there's no way that some men are not, like, don't, like, just like in domestic violence, ages ago, before any education was out there, I'm sure there are men who are like, well, I'm not the victim of anything. Like this is just how it is. This is
Yes,
what
it's
relationships are. And, because the conversation has been in the realm of women
yes.
because they, like, for good reason, men are unaware of 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 the amount of violence they experience at the hands of their partner, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're women.
No, exactly, exactly. And there are, there are even more disturbing statistics is that when they will call the police because of what the woman is doing to them, and the cops get there, the women turn the story around, and 9 times out of 10, the men who are the victims get arrested.
Right. Yeah.
It's
And
so
I've
sad to
I've
me.
seen that happen in my family.
Really. Oh, Martin, I'm so sorry.
Well, no, I mean it's like not to me. But like where everybody is vying for power, and
Yes.
then everybody wants to play the victim to the other.
Yes.
And then you get into like this, toxic relationships of, and then some people are, some people will see themselves as the victim to it, and they both may see themselves as the victim to it, and then they're both the victim of domestic violence because they have participated in violent relationship.
Yes.
And so it's a and this is why there's adjusting of the bow, right? One thing is forced. Like, if you want to move violence up, guess what's going to happen? The top of the bow is going to be bent down, and that is going to create a counter force that you will eventually have to face. Maybe not in your lifetime, because Tao is patient. Just like it says here, ordinary men go against the Tao, taking resources from areas that are deficient, like peace, and giving resources of areas that compulsively consume, like war.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what
Yeah.
we do as people, on this planet. We just continue to lift up that which has been lifted up for millennia.
And that's where change is needed. And
Right.
Whew. And I am ready to go out there and make that change. You have to either have that desire and be prepared to go out and fight alone, because sometimes that's the only way it's going to happen. And if people follow, they follow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think we always have to be prepared to take something on alone, no matter how big that challenge may be, right? Because when it comes to fighting a good fight, right? A good fight for a good reason, not too many people they might believe in it in their hearts, right? But how many are courageous enough? And I'm not patting myself on the back. That probably sounded really bad. How many, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm courageous. I'm Wonder Woman. I didn't mean it like that. But how many really want to do that because they know of the possible verbal ramifications or persecution they're going to face? That's how I see it. That's how I've seen it for a long time.
And when you say that, it brings us into the last section of the 77. The master knows all things are being adjusted. Although she cannot always see it in action, she has faith that it is working through her.
Mm.
So,
Wow.
right, and whether or not that's you fighting or not fighting in the way that you see fighting, right? Like however you're addressing this situation, you know that it is working through you, right? God is working through you to give you the energy to do that which needs to be done, because you, as like the master, not that either of us are masters, but the master knows that things are being adjusted.
Right.
Even
Yep.
if you can't see that they're being adjusted, you stand up and do what's right for you and
Yeah.
for your message. In this way, she allows her actions to unfold, neither dwelling on them nor taking credit.
Yeah. Yep.
Aligned with Tao, they complement all things. So you will be a force for this balancing. And I am grateful you're out there doing the work that you do.
And I've got to tell you that I'm grateful that you do what you do. You speak peace every day.
Well, thank you.
And I love that you speak peace, because it is not something that is spoken of, and it needs to be out there. I love what you were saying about the video games, because the
And
makers,
that's not to say
they
that
don't
I'm against
care.
video games. Like, put them out there.
Oh,
That's fine.
no.
And
No, no.
because I know that Tao is happening, right? I know that just what this is saying, that there is a bending of the bow. Like, you put them out there, and that's just going to increase the amount of energy that is in the minds of people that is peaceful.
Right. My concern, like with the video game, so like when you talk about it and what it's doing to you today, like
Yeah.
what was it, Gran Turismo or some, I don't remember, Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a terrible game. But kids play that.
Yeah.
And the things that they do when they get out of a car and they go and do terrible things to a woman, and parents are letting their little kids play this.
Mm-hmm.
They're little kids. And what are we teaching our children? Not only violence, but disrespect toward women. And
Oh, you dropped down. Please come back up, and then we'll wrap this up. And yeah, and that's what it shows them.
but yeah, like it hurts my heart so bad, and it, people wonder why the society is turning into what it is. And so we need people like you who come and speak peacefully. And whoever, it doesn't even have to be those of us who choose to join and speak in with you. And you're just spreading peace by, talking, and those who listen. And you're giving us those peaceful thoughts to go with and spread out amongst us to others and making that difference that way.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I love you.
I love you and I
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Oh, no, you. Thank you so much. Well, you have a wonderful weekend, and I really appreciate you coming up and choosing 77. It was a beautiful verse.
I wait till I feel like that intuition and then I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
you know,
that's right. That's the way it should be done. Like
that's
just
right.
like there's no forcing, no plan.
Nope,
It's just allow it to be.
that's right. You have a blessed weekend.
You as well.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye bye. All right, we're gonna bring Stephanie up and then Dr. Robert.
Hey, Martin John.
Stephanie, how are you, dear?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I am great.
Yay. I just wanted to come up and what's the right word? Words are not
I
coming.
don't know.
I
Yeah.
just want to affirm what Mary was saying. You are such a wonderful, kind and gentle voice and peaceful voice in this world, and I love listening to you. And I'm I'm always like, oh, is Martin John on? Yay! It's and for right now, like I've had to actually stop listening to so many voices because for me personally, if I tune into so many, um, it stresses me out
Yeah.
because from my background, it was listening to everybody and their thoughts and like, oh, I should do this because so and so says this, I should do that.
Yeah.
And I've realized what's been overwhelming me is I'm listening to too many, and I have to stop and listen to what I am saying, what I know.
Yeah.
Um,
And like you don't like I have stopped listening to so much, and like it just when you can turn everything off and just like let's you and I do this right now just for 10 seconds. Just sit quietly. That's energetic shift.
yeah,
Like we both come back and we're laughing because it's like there's peace in that.
there is. Yeah.
There's stillness in that. And there's so much. Everybody wants to fill space. But earlier when I read number 11, right? 11 was about like the need for emptiness. Emptiness is valuable. We think, "Oh, I'm going to fill this space with some stupid garbage that someone's going to like, and then they're going to move it to another stupid garbage place and all of these things." And it's like, it's all stupid. But that silence that's within us, that silence that, we are inspired to be in that space of peace. Like there's nothing better than that. And yet we want to fill it with another podcast, another book, another someone telling me what's right and wrong. And it's like that stillness, that emptiness, that space that we can be in at any moment. That's who we are. There's no advertising. There's no
Mm.
influence. There's no asking you to be something you're not. There's a verse that says, "Aloneness is avoided by men, yet that is where no identity resides." And in that quiet, like when you and I were quiet, I didn't have to be anything. I didn't have to be the host of this. I didn't have to be someone who wrote the Tao. You didn't have to be anything that you've told me. We just got to sit here together, quietly. Like there's really nothing
Mm.
better than that.
That's true. That's why when you found a a soulmate, like whether it's a friend or a partner, anybody,
Yeah.
when you can just be, man, I've had friends over the years and they would just always fill the space with words. And
Yeah.
I used to get so exhausted, and I was like, well, I'm just an introvert. I'm really tired. But I realized, no, certain people I'm fine around. I can be around for hours, and others within half an hour, I'm done.
Right.
And I realized there's so much noise with those people. Like our energies just don't connect. And yeah, and I do sometimes try to be like that because I used to be very quiet and now I talk a lot. And I do try to fill the space because I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. I'm like, why am I doing this?
Right. Why are you doing that for them? Like that's just going,
Yeah.
and
But I
we've
think it's for
labeled
me
them.
too.
But see, and that's the like we've labeled all these things, introvert, extrovert, right? Like once you create one, you've created the other, right? It's like
Mm.
I'm an extrovert, and so I have given myself the um like the the freedom to impose myself on others because I gave myself that label. Oh, I'm an introvert, so I've given myself the freedom to go sit in the corner, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
really, you're you. Sometimes you're going to want to talk to people, sometimes you're not. And when we label ourselves introvert or extrovert, like if we're an introvert, just because a bunch of people that are uncomfortable in silence have to talk at me all the time and it's exhausting. Well, does that mean I'm an introvert or does that mean they're an asshole? Like, there's a big difference there.
But even then, can we say asshole, or
Yeah, whatever.
is it
That's fine.
like we're
We don't
just,
have to, but like that's our
because
experience,
that's
right?
a
Like
label too, isn't it?
it is.
See,
It's
sometimes I
absolutely a
get
label.
confused.
No, and the thing is there is no destination. There isn't a point where you're going to be done with all of this, right? So it's just
Yeah.
like the thing is they're talking at me, and at the moment I don't want to be talked at. And
Right.
so I am going
And
to have the experience that they're an ass or whatever, and then I get to go and look at myself and be like, okay, well, where in my life and I'm an ass, like, and then we do the work, but that's fine. It all brings us back to ourselves. But, we could take the responsibility and be like, oh, maybe I'm tired and I don't want you to talk to me right now. Can I
yeah.
do that? Can I take responsibility enough to say, hey, let's calm down. Just like I did with you, I just said, hey, let's be quiet for 10 seconds. If I did that with somebody that was not comfortable with being quiet for 10 seconds, they might not have been able to do it. And that might have been a
Hmm.
challenge for them. But I probably wouldn't be inspired to ask that of somebody like that.
Well, and I think the labels become when we start to recognize that there's more people out there like us, and then we feel the need to label it because we lived in such an extroverted world. So for those of us who found it very hard, there was so much like, what's wrong with you? And then when they say, oh, introvert, and they started explaining it, we just felt like, oh, that's ours. And so then it became this thing where you could explain yourself, even though, yeah, we don't need to. But
Blah,
for me, I always
that's
felt,
the, right?
I
That's
always
the
felt like
thing.
I can't just be me. I can't just say, no, I don't
Right.
like that. People would then go, what's wrong with you? You
Right.
have to be like me because this is the world and we're all loud and we talk a
We
lot. And I
have
was like,
labeled
oh,
everything else. You need a label if we are going to literally market to you.
yeah. And even then, Martin John, it's funny because I don't even know because then I find all these things. I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually an introvert. And I'm like, I'm
Right.
an ambivert.
You're not.
But then I'm like, am I? Or is it
You're
just
Stephanie. That's all
the
you
certain
are.
people?
Right.
But also the certain people that you just connect with, right? Because some people are very draining and some people are not for me. And that's because of how just we connect in this world together. And I was like, maybe that's just what it is. I don't know.
And when we
It's
can
interesting.
get rid of all of the labels and just like, and I'm not saying that, like in your life, in
Yeah.
your mind, right? When you can just be like, I connect with this person and I can feel into why, or not even try and answer the question why. I can just allow, oh, I connect with this person. Oh, that's nice. Or I can be like, I don't connect with this person. how much do I want to invest into this relationship?
Right.
Because the thing is if we have a standard of like, oh, well, you need to be nice to everybody. Well, the only way that I can get away from this extrovert who keeps talking at me is to not be nice. So
Mm,
why do I have to be nice? If it's going to, if I'm going to be sacrificing my time and my energy and all of this, why be nice? Is nice so nice if
no.
I'm if I'm giving up all that I am? Do I have to be nice to someone that's going to poke and prod at me because I don't want to go axe throwing with them? Like, just go do your axe throwing. Not everybody has to experience life through this physical, like, way that you do, that you enjoy it. You enjoy that, go do it, and please leave me out of it. I'm not talking about anything that specifically happened to me. I just use axe throwing as like the quintessential axe throwing, and like zip lining, or the quintessential sort of like, let's go out and do something stupid just so that we can feel something, you know? That's sort of kind of like, and so like axe throwing and zip lining, like, where it's like these things aren't, like, in my mind, they are just ridiculous things that were created so people can have more experience, you know what I mean? Like they need that, you know? But and that's sort of, it feels very much like an extroverted thing to do. It's just sort of like, just go bowling. That's all axe throwing is, except you're using an axe instead of a ball, and like whatever. It's all the same. I don't
I
know.
do want to go axe throwing.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with axe throwing,
Yeah.
right?
No, I know
But
what you're saying.
in my experience, and for what I, like, from just viewing it, it's like, here's this thing, and it's just like, and it's such a social media sort of thing. It's like, you're throwing an
Yeah.
axe, and we're going to get it on social media. We can slow it down, and we can do all of these things, right? It's like, it just seems like such a marketed thing.
Well, it's funny because something came up recently about, I was talking with somebody, difference between nice and kind. And we were always taught to be nice, but, it means different things to different people, maybe, right? But nice for me was like, I just have to be nice and do what people want so that they'll like me. And it became a people pleasing kind of thing. Or just because be the nice girl, because girls are taught to be nice. But
Right.
then it's like, you don't have to be nice. Kind is a better, is a kind. I struggle with words around you because I'm like, are you gonna be like,
I'm not
oh, we
gonna
don't need to
attack you on
label?
it. Well, like, I
No,
don't, I
I
don't,
know.
I don't do that. Do I do that?
No, but sometimes I'm like, if I say better, are you gonna say there's nothing better or worse?
Well, yes, I could say that, but
But you know what I mean.
but I hope I would only say it not as a challenge, as much as like, sometimes, just like when Mary was talking about fighting, a big aspect is just like, I have sort of this like thing where it's just like, well, if you're planning to fight, that's one thing. But then when we looked at number 77, was it 77? Yeah, it was talking about like, although she cannot always see it in action, she has faith it is working through her. And if it's working through her, and it's working through her to fight, then fighting is fine.
Mm,
But if she doesn't have faith it's working through her, and she goes out to fight, that's different. Because now you're acting on the world or you're acting on the world which is run by Tao, rather
hmm.
than it acting on you, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, I have to
and
sit
so,
with that for a minute.
yeah, so, you know, the line here is, the master knows all things are being adjusted. Although she cannot always see it in action, she has faith it is working through her. And so I had, like, as it was like, we have to fight, we have to fight, we have to fight, I was like, how do we soften this? because we don't have to fight. You may have to fight because you know all things are being adjusted and you are inspired to fight. So that is your story, and that is what you're doing. However, if you don't have faith that Tao is adjusting things and you think it's your job to adjust them, then you go out to fight. Now you're fighting and you're out there on your own, making your own choices without faith that the world is going to be adjusted. And so that's how I sort of like wanted to adjust the language of fight when we were talking with Mary. Now, if you say something like something is better, I'm like, okay, that's fine, especially if the point isn't that it is better. If the point is that it is better, that does then become a contentious thing, because who's to say?
Well,
And
and
I
see,
don't know. Go on. Did you drop off? Oh, I'm sorry. And yes, there is judgment. I'm not perfect. And I'm always trying to challenge my own thoughts as well. Go
15
on.
minutes goes fast.
It does.
I still have this thing where I still feel, and it's me, right? It's not what other people are even saying or doing, but I feel judged. And now and then I try to adjust, because I'm like, well, people don't like when I say this, and then
Right.
other people are like, why do you care? And I'm like, I don't know. And
And
that's,
I do.
it's such a process.
Because your whole life.
Well, even funnily enough, I literally got a text from a friend, and she's a hypnotherapist, and she's like, we should do a session. And she goes, do you have any plans this weekend? I'm free. And I said, no, I don't have any plans. Or I said something, and she goes, did you mean to say it that way? And now I'm confused, because I'm thinking, did I say it wrong? But I'm like, there is no wrong way to say
Right.
it. But maybe I said it in a way that I don't know. I'm so confused, and I don't know how to answer her. And then I get
Oh.
like, you know what I mean? Like because I tend to worry about what other people are thinking, I
You have
get mad
spent
too
your
much.
entire life
Yeah, it's
checking your language.
exhausting. And but then I don't want to offend people, because I'm also like, I need to be like, I
No, yeah.
hurt for others. So I'm like, oh shoot, did I offend anyone? And I worry about offending everyone. And I'm thinking, oh geez, this is too exhausting to live like this.
Okay. Like let's pick a
But
number and find and get to the bottom of this.
oh, I don't really have a number in my head. Okay, 13.
13. You do now, right?
Because I'm at 13 minutes right now. So
Okay.
oh, I got your
Finding.
book. I'm so excited.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yay.
So
Sorry.
number 13 is finding equality at the extremes.
Mm.
Oh, this is going to be interesting. I like this one for you. To succeed and to fail are equally undesirable. Creation and destruction are equally present within us. What do I mean by to succeed and to fail are equally undesirable? The more success you have, the more you protect it by hiding failure. The more you associate with failure, the more you embody it. With neither success nor failure, when neither success nor failure is identified as the destination, being becomes the objective. What do I mean by creation and destruction are equally present within us? Having a body and a mind with which I identify gets me involved in the manifestation. The manifestation convinces me of my actions, and so naming them, I both create and destroy, neither of which are unique. To see yourself with indifference, you have faith in all things. To see the world with indifference, you will be able to care for it all. What stood out?
Mm.
What stood out
That's
to you?
so good.
Yeah.
Well, there was something about when it comes from your being, it was in the middle.
Being becomes the objective. So the more success you have. So let's look at your language thing that you were talking about. The more success you have, the more you protect it by hiding failure. How do you
Mm-hmm.
hide failure? By not saying the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been
Especially,
successfully, right? Like between you and I, you have successfully communicated, and you have successfully kind of proven to me that you are a worthy person that I can speak to and I can communicate with. And you know that because we communicate and you've seen it. And you don't want to fail. You don't want to be seen differently by me or by others. And so you
and it's
hide failure. You hide those words. You start to close off.
holy that you know what? I literally did a podcast episode on this yesterday because I noticed that, yeah, the more like I'll put myself out there and I'll start getting like talking to people and getting opportunities. And then I just freeze and I hide away and I'm like, this is too much. And
The
then I
more
start getting,
success you have, the more you
yeah,
protect it by hiding failure.
yeah. And I go back to feeling like I did as a kid. And I'm like, and then I start spiraling down a little bit and I'm thinking, what is going on? Um, and then I realize, oh my goodness, you're scared to put yourself out there. And the more that people um, tune in, they lean in to listen to you, the more you realize that you have this responsibility that people are tuning in.
You
And then
make
you're like,
that
I
up, by
can't
the
say
way.
the wrong
That's
thing.
not you
Sorry?
don't have that responsibility. You made that up. You believe you have the responsibility because of the way you were raised, right? Like there's a preacher and that person, he has responsibility over his flock and all of that kind of stuff. That's all story that you have been fed your whole life. You have no responsibility for what people hear.
Yeah.
I mean, you
But
do and you
it was
don't. Like
also,
there is a point where it's like, like you want to be
you have
honest.
influence.
Yeah, you have influence and you have to
There's,
take that into consideration.
yeah, like there was
But
this thing we were taught, preachers have it more responsibility to God because, they're leading people down the wrong way, then, they're going to be in trouble with God. And so I used to be so scared, like, oh, I can never be a leader because what if I do the wrong thing and lead people away from God? Like there was such a fear of that.
and here, like, let's take that as a frame of reference that you carry deep in your subconscious. If that's true, then you will, as you begin to have people pay attention to you, embody this fear of
Hmm.
taking them down the wrong path. And if you are honest, now you have to be honest with you. I believe one has to be honest with themselves first and be able to be wrong and be able to just be on this path. This is why this verse starts with, to succeed and to fail are equally undesirable. There's nothing to either of those things. There's nothing to be gained. Like living your life, right? This is where that line, being becomes the objective. When neither success nor failure is identified as the destination, being becomes the objective.
That goes back to what you and Mary were talking about when Mary said that when she does posts, and I sent her a message. I'm like, yeah, when something inspires you, when you write a post about it and put it on social media, it means so much more than like, oh yeah, I have to do a post because it's that time again.
Right.
Um, and that's you being you.
That's right.
And it's so much more like I've noticed that too. I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel like posting this. And it's so much more fun. And then people connect with that rather than like, oh yeah, I haven't posted in a while. I should probably do that, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yeah. There's no inspiration. You're not being guided. You're not and this goes back to the idea of the 11 that we read, the first one that we read, which spokes, tires, rim, and hub all make a wheel. Words, paragraphs, phrases, and quips all make a blog post. But it
Mm-hmm.
is the space that it comes from. It's the inspiration that makes it worthwhile. It's
Yeah.
not about the structure. It's about the substance. And where does the substance come from? However, you cannot experience substance the feminine without the masculine.
So
Because the
what's the
masculine,
masculine of substance?
what's that?
What's the masculine version of
Structure.
substance? Oh,
Your body,
oh.
your body is masculine, right? So that is, but the soul is feminine. The Tao is feminine. That's
Mm.
the substance of you.
Mm.
Your body
Oh,
doesn't
that's
mean
interesting.
anything. Your body can go away. It's just structure. It is just the cup to the substance that I am going to drink. So there's structure masculine, substance feminine, and you cannot experience pure substance. That is why when you can't cast your eyes on God, because God is pure substance, right? That is why Tao can't be seen or heard or grasped. It is pure say, it's pure feminine. Then you make the edge of the universe. That's your first masculine thing. Now you have the edge of the universe. Now you can have space within that. Now you have a reference point. Once you have a reference point, you can put things in it. Planets, universes, all of their planets, solar systems, all of that stuff. Now they have a place to be. Now they can be associated with one another. Each one of those things is masculine. Within each one of those things exists the feminine. Within that, you create more structure. So you have a solar system, and that's a masculine thing. But the space within the solar system, feminine. Within that, you create masculine planets. On the surface of the planet is space, which is feminine. And then the beings that inhabit it, masculine. The souls within those beings, feminine. Top to bottom. But you cannot experience. And which came first, the male or female? Female. Because without substance, you would need no structure.
Mm.
That's why
That's
the feminine is the strongest energy.
that's fascinating. We were taught that we were kind of second because we came out of Adam.
No, and that is a religion that was built within a masculine framework,
Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
But it doesn't take into consideration that God must be feminine. Like if it
Well, how
existed with nothing, right? If it existed before anything else, then it has to start as feminine, because you cannot have structure without a substance because you wouldn't need a substance to expose nothing. So you
well,
expose structure.
it's funny. We were taught like God had to be a he, Jesus was a he, and then the Holy Spirit is like the feminine.
No,
So
no, well,
so like Holy
yeah.
Spirit was like the substance, I suppose. So, but now
Jesus is
I like
actually
listening.
like, if you look at the energy of Jesus, that is a super feminine energy.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Martin John, there's there's this I don't know exactly his title, but anyways, he's a Christian leader, Russell Moore, and he has said he'll have preachers who will come to him and say, I'm talking on the Sermon on the Mount and about, this kind and humble and beautiful Jesus. And people were like, what's this wussy Jesus you're talking about? Our Jesus is a manly man, because there's this viewpoint of him as this militia type muscular dude. And it's like, dudes, did you
Jesus
not read your
spent all of his
Bible? Like,
time with 12 dudes. Like, he is not a man, like, he is not running, like, I mean, he was a carpenter, I'll give you that. But, like, no, like, he wasn't some loud yelling
no,
masculine, like, he was soft and he was
but that's
yielding.
what they've turned him into. Like, there's a book called Jesus and John Wayne, and the author Kristen Dumais explains kind of this viewpoint of warlike Jesus touting Jesus, gun touting Jesus, and how that's become
He
more
would have never.
in. in the
Oh.
American viewpoint. And so she's like, she was kind of explaining the history of it. And I was like, wow, that's so wow. Because it's not exactly what he was supposed to, like who he was.
No.
So it's very interesting how we've put that on. But anyway,
Yeah,
I
and
came up to say you're
yeah.
wonderful.
Well, let me just say you're right. No, but
Oh,
I really appreciate you coming up. I know your time is running out, but I really appreciate number 13, um, and you coming up and choosing that, and really it does. I do kind of feel like it fits for what you need to hear at the moment. I don't know.
thank you. And now Dr. Robert can come up. He's been waiting so patiently.
He has been. He's still there too. Oh, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Love to all of you.
Bye bye. All right, Doctor. This has been a long day. I mean, we're going on 2 hours here, so let's wrap up with Dr. Robert and see what's going on. Hey, Dr. Robert, how are you?
I just want to, well, all the talk was great, but what stood out to me is the domestic and the thought of playing the games, video games, and how,
Hmm.
like, negative deals and robbing and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
both side of the kids, boy and girl, grow up and they have that set mind, and as well as they seeing other people's, and depend on how their parents is treating them. So I mean, it really is you creating domestic balance without even doing it.
Right. There's violence within the domicile, right?
That's
Within
right.
the domestic environment, and when you know, it's interesting. When my nieces and nephews, I don't have children, when my nieces and nephews would stay in their rooms, there would be sort of this dark cloud over their rooms. And when you would get near them, you'd be able to feel that the energy shifts. And
Right.
when there's certain teenage ages, you can experience that, like, oh man, you are going through some stuff. And there isn't a way in, right? It is almost like that closed door or whatever they're experiencing. There's like a shield in front of it that they're putting up, and that is sort of this attitude of violence, of like, if you come in here you will experience violence, if you cross this, and it's
Yeah.
and there are moments where that energy sort of like calls at you, and it's not until it's kind of like I've seen my sister raising her children, and I'll see she won't be able to spend a lot of time in front of that door unless she's angry. It's like if her child upsets her, or if she comes home and she's angry or whatever, and then she sees like clothes on the floor or something, and there's a reason to go and like yell, then boom, there's conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And that conflict exists because of like whatever's going on in that child. I'm not saying the child is the cause of it, but this is how it's like, I can't associate with that violence until I'm violent. And once I can, I am called into that room to experience this physicalness of whatever, games they're playing, or whatever interactions they're having online, whether it's being bullied or whether it's like violent or whether they're being mean to other people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I actually had one guy at school. He was the bully, and it was just the sound of my voice. I have a deep voice. He went, James. I went, what? And I looked at him. You ain't scared of me? Or something like that. You don't fear me. That's what he said.
Mm.
I said, there's a reason.
Why should I?
And he said, everybody does, you know. I said, well, I'm not everybody, you know. But I never answered his question. Do I fear him? I just asked him, is there's a reason?
Right.
Yeah. And it was just like, okay, you, why? Why are you creating an attitude, a negative attitude? I want to challenge me.
Right.
Well, I heard you. Yeah, he also said, I heard you know martial arts. I was like, I look at kung fu movies. I'm just 14. I mean, I'm
I don't
not
know
a
what you're
black
talking
belt
about.
or nothing. Really, you know. Sure. And back then, you can carry the little them little knives is almost like Boy Scout knives.
Oh yeah,
You know?
yeah, like
Yeah,
Swiss Army
shoot.
knife or whatever.
Yeah, so I always had one in my pocket. My father had one in his pocket.
Yeah, you
You know,
never know
so
when you're gonna need one.
right, yeah. You know, and I
That's
always
not to
take it out.
stab somebody, but that's just
Not
like,
really, but I always take it out and clean my nails, you know, and
yeah.
so everybody know I had it, you know, but I
Mhm.
never put it on nobody.
No,
So
that's
yeah,
not what that's for.
no, not like that. But in any case, I'm gonna go with 76.
76, beautiful. Make it easy. Life is flexible. It is true for all things that while aligned with life, there is yielding, flexibility, and grace. It is also the case that aligned with death, all things are stiff, brittle, and inflexible. In all things we can witness plainly, rigidity of any kind is a companion of death. Softness of any kind is a companion of life. Be soft and yielding. It overcomes rigidity. I read this one recently, and these three words, of any kind, really sort of shine, because that's what makes it unique to every individual.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are rigid about being soft, that's rigidity of a certain kind. And a rigidity of any kind is a companion of death. So if you're saying, look, you can't have a schedule, and you can't have a schedule at all, well, that's and if you live life to be like, I'm just going to go to bed when I feel like I'm going to, like, that's all fine. But if you have to do it that way, that's rigidity. Now, if you have a schedule that you attach to every day, yes, that could be considered rigid. But if your schedule is flexible, meaning, sometimes I go to bed at 8, sometimes I go to bed at 9, sometimes I wake up at 3, sometimes I wake up at 7, sometimes, like but you do have a rigidity. Like for me, I wake up, I journal, and then I feed my cat, and I have like I do a morning sort of, like yoga, and then I'll do my Tao of the day. But if I can't miss any of that, it's pure rigidity. If I allow
Mm-hmm.
myself to be flexible with it, then it's softness. So rigidity of any kind is a companion of death. Softness of any kind is a companion of life. So it's about having this whole, like, all of this together. And when I wrote it, it was very much about the idea of it being able to touch everybody differently. It doesn't have to be. Like, you don't have to live your life in, like, you can add softness to rigidity, and that you're a companion of life. You can add rigidity to softness, and that's a companion of death.
Yes. But when you was reading it, I actually thought about what my grandmother would always say: "Listen well, but think twice before you speak."
Yeah.
You know, and it's really us taking steps on. Okay, you have to get up and go to work. You're going to go out there and like for real, me. I water my garden maybe once or 3 or 4 times a day. I mean, 3 or 4 times a week,
I was going to
once a
say, that's
day.
a lot of water.
Yeah, and then maybe on the weekends I might water twice a day.
Okay.
No, but less time. I might go out there and put maybe 15 minutes of water on all 8 of them, you know, and maybe that night, around 7 or 8 o'clock, before it get dark, I put a little bit more water on them, just like that, just to sort of keep them going and give them time to make their own nutrients and all that other good stuff. Because
Yeah.
if you overwater something, then it's going to grow, but you're going to get some big tomatoes full of water. They're going to taste like water, so just do them at the right time. That's all I do.
Yeah, that's right. Do it at the right time. You gotta add rigidity. And to that rigidity, you get to be soft. And then you have a good way of going about it. In all things, we can witness plainly that that's the case. So be soft and yielding. It overcomes rigidity. And that's what we were talking about with Stephanie too. The soft and yielding is that substance to the rigidity of the
Mm-hmm.
structure.
That's right.
So, well, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Dr. Robert.
Yes, and thank you. I was just going to say that. Thank you for, and all the people that actually was on here. I really enjoy their numbers and their talks too, as well. And to me, this is a live search engine and an opportunity to relearn what you already know and learn another way of saying different things that you already know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful to be
So
able to listen.
yes, and thank you. And
Absolutely.
so
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. All right. So
you,
today we had Julie come up and we read number 11. And then Mary came up and we read 77, The Bending of a Bow, and talked about how all of that even related back to number 11, which was emptiness is valuable, right? Like this idea of like the emptiness of something. And then that came back around with number 13 and Stephanie, when we were talking about finding equality at the extremes and this idea of that emptiness, right? That femininity, that yielding strength. It's not just about like the overpowering, and it's about that which is most valuable, that which is within you, that substance, that soul, that internal space, you know that which was you at 7 years old and is still you. And yes, your mind is different and your body is different, but there is a you that is in there, and that subjective you is your experience, and that is deep, and that is connected to all things. Thank you so much for Dr. Robert in 76. I appreciate you coming up as well. Once again, rigidity of any kind is a companion of death, and softness of any kind is a companion of life. And let's be soft and yielding. As you go into your weekend, I hope each and every one of you can see areas where you can find a little space to be a little bit more yielding, a little more soft. This was a 2-hour Tao of the day, and I appreciate you guys for coming up and keeping it easy for me. Thank you again. I'll see you on Monday, 6 a.m. Central, 7 Eastern, and if you're somewhere else, I'm sure you can figure out the time from there. Love you all, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.